What is going on, everybody? Back with another video. Today I'm going to be doing a Q&A, so I've got a couple questions here from Instagram. I told everybody I was going to respond to all of them, so here we go. Let me see which one I want to start with here. All right. Do I like prep or the off season more? So me personally, it's kind of funny. I think there's kind of like a end of both sides that I appreciate the most. Prep provides me a lot more structure in my life. I just feel like I have something I'm working towards in the gym. Of course, in the off season, our end goal is to grow a lot of muscle and get really strong. But there just comes a point where the wheels start to fall off, and then within prep, you're getting to see all that hard-earned muscle that you put on in the off season. So I think prep for me is more exciting. There comes a point, of course, with that where you're just starving and you're tired all the time. That's not so fun, but I think all around, I'd probably say prep's more enjoyable for me because I know there's this end goal that we're looking toward, and then past the end goal, you get to look forward to going back into the off season and getting to grow again. So I think all around, that's probably my favorite, me personally. I can see where people would probably, point for off season more, but that's just my personal preference. Um, Probably just from getting to see all the extra definition that I haven't seen in a while. So, all right. So, this next question, if I could start over in my bodybuilding journey, what would I do differently and why? Well, there's a couple things I would do different. Um, I think first, I would be more inclined to have patience. When I was 18 years old and I was becoming an adult, um, I had it in my head very early. I was like, I'm gonna just go all out and do this. And um, in the early stages of becoming a competitive bodybuilder, you don't realize how expensive the sport really is. You know, you understand the expense of buying groceries, you understand the expense of using performance enhancements, but you don't understand it at the level at which competitors do because there's a lot more expenses that go on there when it comes to competing. And so, if there's something I would do, which of course I can go way back to whenever I was actually like first trying to become this so-called bodybuilder in my teen years, but as far as a competitive bodybuilder goes, I think I wish I would have been more patient, in a mature sense of knowing that financially I was not ready to be a competitive bodybuilder. I think just for me though, I wanted to compete that first time when I was 19 because I wanted to make sure I actually really was like in love with it the way I thought I was. And it was really only just that much more validating for me to realize how much I actually enjoyed competing. But financially, I was in no position to be doing what I was doing trying to compete. So that would be one. Obviously, if I could start over my bodybuilding journey from the very beginning, there's just a lot of things I would change about it if I had the knowledge that I have now back then, assuming that we're talking about that, because in that case, there's probably a lot of fad training styles that I tried that just didn't work. I didn't have enough understanding about nutrition to really dial in on getting the most results out of my training. And I quite honestly, I overtrained. I was a 12, 13, 14-year-old kid doing a 6-day Arnold split with high volume, 5 sets of 8 to 12 on everything and eating like a freaking bird. So, yeah, that would absolutely be different. Um, Performance enhancements. I always tell guys my age, no matter how ready that you think you are to start performance enhancements, it's probably still too early. It's probably still too early. Um, I had spent many years researching about pharmacology and the proactive, necessities behind trying to stay healthy while using performance enhancements. I understood the hair loss, the acne problems, the gyno. I understood that, the brain development doesn't finish until you're 25. You've got growth plates you have to worry about. But at the end of the day, I knew time is of the essence in this sport. And, if you get too old, I say too old, you get to a point where, let's say that I had actually been patient and maybe I waited and said, I'm not going to start using performance enhancements until I'm 25, just as an example. Maybe by that point in my life, I would have derailed myself so much from trying to become the competitive bodybuilder I am right now, that maybe I would have never actually pursued it. Maybe I would have realized that there's other things in life aside from bodybuilding. And so it's hard to play devil's advocate with that because that's not the life I chose. From very early on, I had it in my head, this is what I'm going to do. And it's what I'm doing. But um, yeah, I don't know. I can't really say if that would have changed the entire outcome of my endeavor, and maybe I would have cut myself short. But I guess besides that, there's not much I would change. I think the process that I went through was necessary. It was good learning experience. I learned a lot about myself. Um, so yeah, I don't think there's much more I would change. I think financially being in the right position in life to pursue this sport, that's one, and two, just obviously having a better understanding about how to actually do this. My mom, whenever I was 13 years old, being very supportive. Mom, get me chicken breast. Mom, get me this. I wish I would have known a little bit more about what I was doing at that time, because maybe I would have asked for things, that were more sufficient. Mom, get me this mass gainer protein powder. Like, that shit's, I wouldn't have done that. I was taking the serious mass optimum nutrition shit, and it was just junk in a shake. So yeah, like stuff like that. Absolutely. I wish I would have taken advantage of just different things at the time. But other than that, not too much. How have I coped with the inevitable body dysmorphia that comes with bodybuilding? Well, cope is a strong definition for that. I don't think there's ever truly like an exception of coping with body dysmorphia, because there's like, you're looking at an individual who constantly looks at themselves in the mirror and says that's not enough. And so how can I sit here and say, yeah, I don't have body dysmorphia, or oh, I've overcome body dysmorphia? To an extent, I look at myself now and I'm still like, yeah, I'm not big enough. So it's like, I don't know about overcoming body dysmorphia. I think I've just become more aware of, it doesn't have to be the end of the world if I don't make it to X physique. I don't need to compare myself to other people because this is the body that I was given. These are the genetics I was given by my parents. I can't damn my parents for not giving me Mr. Olympia caliber genetics. Or, I see some of these hyper responders, very young age like myself, who they didn't lose their hair and they're pros already, and they're already at the top of the competitive league, and probably don't even know what they're putting in their bodies performance enhancement wise, and they have no clue about diet. Maybe they got lucky and had a good coach in their corner, whatever it may be, man. Like, at the end of the day, I can't play that game of comparison, because we live in a society now of constant comparison, so it's so easy to steal away the fruits of your own labor when you're sizing it up to somebody else's, and the opportunities and just things that were given to them in their life that maybe you weren't. So I don't think there's really any overcoming it. I think it's just a matter of perspective, and shifting that perspective into, not that I'm miserable because of this, but thank God for the opportunity to do this. Because I wouldn't even know what I was capable of if I never had some sense of dissatisfaction rather. Think of it this way: what's the entire opposite of body dysmorphia? I think it's delusion. Delusion that, yeah, I'm healthy, but I'm also 300 pounds and on blood pressure medication, and I have to use a CPAP, not because I'm a huge freakish bodybuilder like myself, but instead I have to use a CPAP because I have so much fat in my esophagus, around my esophagus, that I'm literally just choking in my sleep. It's stuff like that. Like, it's the entire opposite. So I think I would much rather suffer from the body dysmorphia of never feeling muscular enough. At least, again, having some perspective here. If your body dysmorphia is so severe that it comes at the cost of your, not only your mental health but also your physical health as well, you're putting things in your body that are causing deleterious effects that are going to shorten your lifespan significantly. That's something to be concerned about. And by all means, I don't mean to normalize what I'm doing, but what I am saying is, like, I have a healthy enough relationship with myself to know at some point this is going to end. And if that day comes tomorrow, then thank God I at least got to work until today, you know, got to pursue this until today. Do I want it to end tomorrow? Of course not. But I know that there's an end of this mountain eventually, and so I have to be prepared when that day comes. That's why I started so early, and that's why I try to just not take for granted the opportunity that I've been given and just the time that I've been allotted here. So, anyway, I think that answers that question. Two biggest struggles that I've faced mentally in bodybuilding and how I overcame them. You see, that's a loaded topic, and the person who sent me this question, they said, yeah, if this is too deep for a conversation, it's fine. But I figure I can probably speak surface level here. I face mentally with bodybuilding in bodybuilding. That's a tough one. I think that kind of relates back to the body dysmorphia thing, um, because I'm so much happier where I am now because it's so easy to talk about in my position now. Oh, but I'm not as big as so and so, or I'm not like an IFBB pro that's like on the way to competing at the Mr. Olympia. But I'm also not that 15-year-old kid again that was way smaller and way weaker and wished that I looked the way I do right now. So I think there came a point where that dissatisfaction went from an extreme level of unhealthy and a extreme obsession to now we're just kind of at a moderate level here and we're fine. Like we're still chugging away, we're still like pursuing our goals, and it's not like I'm any less patient than I was then or any more patient, let's say, but my goals have shifted because now I realize when I walked into a Walmart, when I walk into a general convenience store or whatever, people look at me and they're like, yeah, that guy looks different. Because I don't even realize myself how outside of the average crowd I am until I get stares from people in public, no matter what I'm dressed in. If I'm wearing a tank top or I'm wearing a regular shirt, like I'm getting stares. I'm getting people coming up to me and saying like, what's your workout routine, man? Or steroids, that kind of thing. So again, I think that shift in perspective once you have accrued enough muscle mass to maybe not feel so below the rest of the people in this industry, in this sport. Um, I'm just thinking on this question. I guess another struggle that I've actually faced within bodybuilding itself was just, gosh, that's a hard one. I think what I realized very early on was there's a lot more that's beneath the surface. That there's probably a really strong reason a lot of people are influenced by bodybuilding, and it's not what you might think. Because bodybuilding, for me, as much as it's a physical sport and the subjective sport of judging symmetry and balance and proportions and all that, at the end of the day, bodybuilding for me was getting in the gym and just going balls to the wall and taking out physical and mental pain that I was experiencing in my life. I think that's why I got hooked onto it so early in my life, and I don't want to go into a whole pity party here or a sob story, but I didn't have the best childhood. Experienced a lot of pain growing up. My father took his own life when I was a kid, and I was really confused after that. I just had a lot of anger towards him. I had a lot of anger just in general, and the kids I grew up around me didn't have that, or at least most of them that I was around. If they had issues like that, they carried it a lot better than I did because as much as I was able to mask my own problems and just kind of do my own thing, as I was an introverted extrovert. I figured out how to fit in with the crowd around me, but also I spent more time in my own, in my own company, and I found that bodybuilding or just working out in general was a really good outlet for me. Going beyond the state of physical weakness, I was mentally weak, and so I think bodybuilding initially for me was a way to deflect mental weakness. I think I was trying to put armor on around me, and I would say it definitely did mentally strengthen me. It made me a lot stronger, um, and I can say today that I'm much like more in a healthier state of mind than I was even just a few years ago. Digesting a lot of those feelings in your teen years and even in early adulthood, if you don't if you don't tackle them head on, they're going to project themselves in every like facet of your life. You're going to project your problems onto other people without even meaning to. There could be things that are going on in your mind and you don't even realize that you're carrying it on your shoulders and you're putting it on the people around you that you care about. And so I think more than anything that bodybuilding taught me, it was to look inward. It was to look inward at myself and to realize that there is more to life than just building muscle. It definitely, I think that's the beautiful thing about it for me. I get emotional about it because it's, as much as it is a physical sport for me, it it strengthened me so much more than I ever could have without it. I don't know where I would be right now if it weren't for bodybuilding. It's such a unhealthy, obsessive sport in a sense, but at the same time, I feel like I'd be in such a worse position in my life if it weren't for it. And so I try to extrapolate the good out of it, even if it inherently could be pointed out as a bad thing. I don't think it has to make you a bad person. I think it can make you a better person. And I think a lot of people who are into the same sport as me would agree. I think a lot of them have probably experienced their own problems in their own lives. And bodybuilding was that thing for them to go put their efforts into. Again, kind of like trying to build your own physical armor. So, yeah, that was like one big struggle. That's essentially like me going over my biggest struggle with bodybuilding as a whole, because I think that's why it became such an obsessive thing for me, was because it was the only time that I ever had a true sense of just peace in my life. There was always things going on around me that were out of my control. There was a lot of angry feelings I had internally that I didn't know how to deal with, and I certainly didn't really believe in going to therapy and talking about my problems, because some things just can't be said out loud, to at least to other people, to fix you. I think some of it you just got to deal with internally. And it's not to say that I'm just like slate free now. Like, I'm still Daniel. I'm still the person that had to go through all those things when I was younger, but I think that I'm a stronger, better version of myself because of it now. So anyway, I think that kind of covers it. I mean, other than that, just again, he's talking about mental struggle here. So yeah, that's my biggest thing. I'm sure somebody could relate to that in some sense. It could be a lot more superficial, like I just wanted to look better because I was a fat kid my whole life, or I was a skinny kid my whole life, and I got picked on. I had a little bit of that too. I got picked on, but it's it's kids will be kids, right? I could spend the rest of my life being angry about getting picked on for being a fat kid, but also once you're old enough, you realize, man, kids are assholes. Like, you can't, can you blame them for picking on you? Like, you were the easiest target and it made them look good. So yeah, shit just fucking happens, man. You got to grow up one day and just realize, like, that was just a temporary time in your life. You're a grown ass person now, grown ass man, grown ass woman, and you got your own life now, and nobody from high school gives a shit what you're doing, and I don't give a shit what they're doing either. Maybe a few people. I care about a couple people. So training principles that I've adopted that have contributed to growth. Um, Training principles. That's an interesting topic, because it's like the saying, one size does not fit all, especially in this sport. I don't believe one size fits all. We can look time and time again and look at the broad range of athletes within the bodybuilding sport and extrapolate some ideas behind training principles based on what the large demographic of people um, utilize. You know, high volume, high intensity, going to failure or going close to failure. Diet approaches, obviously, it's kind of like the same thing. But as far as training principles go, I think as long as you're going in the gym and you are progressively getting better and That doesn't mean necessarily increasing weight or increasing the logbook. I think it means sustaining and figuring out how to challenge yourself even with the same amount of weight that you used the week prior. Because on paper, you might be able to progress your logbook, but what your logbook doesn't tell you is how long did that set take? Did that set from last week take 40 seconds and this set from this week took 35? Because that technically means that you didn't progress. Because now you just shortened the length of your reps. And so it's like stuff like that. It's like, how do you consistently dissect your training and figure out how to make it better without necessarily increasing the amount of load that you're working with? Because I see guys all day, leg pressing 9 plates on each side, but my legs are bigger than theirs, and I don't have to do that. I mean, I can, I don't have to, and I certainly feel a hell of a lot better not having to. And so, and somebody could, reference genetics with all that too, and of course, I can reference genetics. I think, again, you talk about training principles. Everybody has a different genetic response to certain levels of stimulus and volume and all that shit. So I think find what works best for you. General rule of thumb, obviously train close to failure or train to failure with a level of uniformity in all your reps, making sure that you're working with a weight you can control. Again, I think if there's one thing that I've learned over all the years is that concentrics should probably be explosive. They should be really, really powerful concentrics, because what you are attempting to achieve is to use as much weight as you possibly can and get the maximum contraction out of it. The eccentric, though, is the portion at which I recommend slowing it down, controlling it. It should take you, depending on what exercise you're doing, it should take you 3 to 4 seconds to lower the weight back down to the rested position or whatever. On the concentric, you should be fighting as hard as possible every single rep to do this exact same thing. It's going to slow down. Your concentrics are going to slow down, and that's where mechanical failure gets achieved. I think you should even fight for partials. I think that's another thing. If you can't achieve a full range of motion, do a partial. That is a way to intensify your sets. There's drop sets. You can do those for training principles as far as ways to intensify your workouts. But just continually finding ways to challenge yourself within your training session. I think that's really important. And I think it's very easy to get caught in the endless cycle of doing the same thing, expecting a different result. If there's one thing that I learned hiring a coach, it's that what I thought was training hard was not as hard as what I'm training now, and so on and so forth. What I think is training hard right now is one day going to be a cakewalk for me. And so it should continue to become that. What a first year person in the gym is going to be able to achieve is still a hard workout. Maybe not to you because you've been in the gym for a long time, but for them, they are going hard. You just don't see it because relative to where you're at in your journey, it isn't hard. It's not, because you're trained to do that. It's like running a mile. There's people that can run a 4-minute mile. I'm going to make that 10-minute mile look like shit, and it's going to be difficult. They might even sweat less than me in 4 minutes. So, it really comes down to training experience, but continually challenging yourself, I think that's really important. That's what's contributed to the most growth for me. Just going in there and training my fucking ass off. But again, with a grain of salt, it's not just about progressing weights. Yes, we all want to lift the max stack. There are some exercises where I can move the max stack for 12 plus reps. But then again, am I controlling the eccentric for a long enough period of time? Because then all of a sudden you slow it down and now you're like, oh shit, this is a lot harder than I remember it being. Well, yeah, that's why it can be good. As much as I don't, it's not that I don't condone tripods in the gym, because I record my own sets. I'd be a hypocrite to say that. I just think that you have to have the right reasons why you're recording your sets. Like, I really like to go back and watch my stuff to make sure that it's got some uniformity and it compares really well to the week prior. And then it's just like a form of training audit. You can just go back and watch and just see, like, if you tweak something, was there something that you were doing wrong? Did one part of your body shift a little bit versus the other side? Or Did you have your neck tilted forward or back if you tweak your neck? Like, it's stuff like that. It can help to have training footage. So anyway, I think that's pretty good there. After my first NPC win, or sorry, after your first NPC win, how long should you take to compete at nationals? Or assuming really how I would word this question, how long should you spend growing, or how long should you wait to compete at a national level show after your first NPC win? And that is a up in the air question. Question mark, question mark, question mark. I truly don't have a number of time, or a length of time that you should wait from one or the other. I think it comes down to how you looked at your NPC show. You could be Ronnie Coleman size and go win your first NPC show. You'd be stupid not to go compete in a national show the day after. But you can also show up to an NPC level national qualifier, and there's just no competition there. So you technically nationally qualify. But are you ready for nationals? Because I'll tell you right now, my last national show, I knew I wasn't going to do well. I had the slight sliver of hope in the back of my head that maybe I would do okay, but I also was 15 pounds under the weight cap. It would be delusional to think, yeah, it's going to be a cakewalk. I'm going to walk in and win. No. I would have to get extremely lucky and literally nobody show up. That would be it. That would be how you get your pro card. And I don't want to demean or take credit away, but I imagine that happens commonly within the very, very light weight classes, like lightweights or middleweights or whatever. I don't get me wrong. I've seen some middleweights that look crazy too, but I think, like, depending on what division you're doing, if you're doing classic or you're doing open, you're doing men's physique, I think it's subjective on that too. I think if you're doing open bodybuilding and you're above 5'6", you're gonna have to be a really, really big guy to compete and win your pro card. Or again, because you said how long should you wait? You can literally go to the national show. It doesn't matter. You can go to the national show right after you nationally qualify. But are you going there to win? And so my last show, I wasn't going there to win. I was just going to get the experience. And now it's like, okay, I want to take the time to get the necessary amount of tissue to actually possibly win or get top 5 in my class. And so essentially me and my coach, our goal for this last year has been grow into the top of heavyweights. I was 210 last time I competed, need to be 225. I feel like we're pretty much in striking distance of that now. I'm not over assuming, I don't think, by saying that, but I'd say I'm probably going to end up being 220 to 225 next time I compete. So if I put on 10 to 15 pounds of stage tissue in a year, I'd say kudos to me. That was a good fucking job. Good productive off season. But again, I think it comes down to where you're at. I think the best reference here, if you're really wondering, look at national level shows. Look at the competitors who are winning. Do you look like those guys? If not, then you probably shouldn't bother competing. If you look somewhat close to them, or you think you might be able to get lucky and come into a show and maybe one of those crazy freaks don't show up, by all means. But I'm telling you, there are some freaks at those shows. I stood backstage and I met a guy who had just won his first ever NPC show, like not even a few weeks before. And then he said, "This is my first national show." He won the show. He won the overall. He won the heavyweight class and he won the overall. First bodybuilding show, technically, as far as like besides his national qualifier, that he also won the overall for. Genetic freak. I follow him on social media. His name's Trey Ballard. I clicked through his profile whenever I saw that he won, and I was like, I wonder how long this guy's been into bodybuilding. And it was like all powerlifting style training up till a certain point. And then all of a sudden, guy just turns bodybuilder, and his muscle belly's just got leaner and more ripped and crazy bubbly. And when I saw him backstage, I knew without a doubt, I shit myself. I saw him standing behind me, and I saw another guy, Ranson Lee, who also competed. And I looked at both of them, and I was like, those are the top 2 guys. And lo and behold, that's exactly who it was. And then Ranson went on to win his pro card at NPC Nationals later in the year last year. So if you don't stand next to those guys and think, I could take that, it's not even worth it. And even now, I'm like, there's still no way I could beat somebody like that. But, I'm getting closer and closer. And again, it could just be that I have to be even bigger and compete as a super heavy. I don't know. We won't know until I compete again. And so if you've made significant amounts of progress and you've already taken a crack at nationals, by all means, take another crack, see where you're at now, see if you get lucky. But there is no finite answer for this. I really think it's person dependent where you're at in your journey. Are you an open level bodybuilder or are you a men's physique guy? Because that can play a huge role too. Okay, I think I've got one more question, and then we're probably going to wrap it up. Let me make sure I didn't get any more. Yeah, I think that's it. So we got one more here. What is my opinion on the concept of pushing big dosages while young and, quote, resilient, instead of gradually increasing androgen loads over a career? Big question. So, I think doses don't matter. They don't matter as much as you might think. I'm not. Let me add an asterisk to that before somebody goes crazy. As you get larger, you're going to require more androgen load because you have more androgen receptors in your body that require more androgens to continue to recruit more contractile tissue. In that sense, yes, you're going to have to push big doses. But what I will tell you through my own experience, I got a little ballsy whenever I was first getting into performance enhancements, and I just thought, yeah, just use more and you'll put on more muscle. No, that's not how it works. You just get more side effects because your body can only utilize so much of those androgens, and then what happens to the rest of them? They're just floating around in your blood, and then they're creating more downstream effects like, bad acne on your skin, hair loss, gynecomastia. Now, I'm not attributing direct correlation to the extra levels of androgens in your body to that, but I'm saying, in a sense, the poison's in the dose. If your body can't, I guess the best example I could give is like typically, from what I'm aware with alcohol, the bigger of an individual you are, the more that you're going to require to get the same desired effect as the person who's 100 pounds. Same thing with drugs, steroids. I think the bigger you are muscularity wise, the more androgens you're going to require to then therefore continue to produce more contractile tissue. Now, again, I should probably preface the difference between actually producing new muscle cells and just essentially expanding the current contractile tissue you have. So when we're growing muscle, you've got muscle hyperplasia and you've got hypertrophy. Hyperplasia is the production of new muscle cells. Hypertrophy is just the growth of the contractile tissue that you already have. So when it comes to androgens, I hope I'm referencing this well, because I'm sure somebody maybe a little bit more intelligent than me can probably elaborate a little bit further. But my general understanding of it is that androgens themselves are not going to produce new muscle, like muscle cells. They're going to essentially allow you to create larger contractile tissue of what's currently on your body. So essentially think about like beef jerky. It's a very, very dried out beef. And of course, when you pump a bunch of fluid in there, they get bigger. I feel like, in a sense, if we're trying to make a comparison here of visualization, I think that with the higher androgen load, it allows you to fill more water into that area. Now, of course, that is saying that you had to stimulate create an adaptation through a stressful response, micro tears on the muscles, that then allow that muscle protein synthesis to occur, which then causes that contractile tissue to enlarge. So that's kind of a little science-based there, but I think that might make sense. I might be poorly wording it, but essentially you get what I'm saying, I think. So with that being said, I think doses should only be required to move up when you're no longer getting more gym performance out of what you're currently on. So there's two ways that we assess progressions in an off-season phase. And the same could be said somewhat in a prep, but it's a little different because in a prep, our primary goal is just muscle retention. We're not trying to grow any more muscle. You hear guys that say, I grew into my show. I don't know, man. Maybe you were just flat all the way up until you peaked. And then whenever you peaked, you grew into your show, but in reality, you just filled out. I don't know if you actually peaked. So I don't want to even use that as a scapegoat here, but with an off season, we as performance enhanced bodybuilders, we have two levers generally to pull. We got three actually, but to go into the ones that we're talking about here, you got food and you've got drugs. There's volume and like intensity within training as well, but for the sake of this topic, you've got food and drugs. If you're getting stronger in the gym and you're not getting softer, you're probably on a good amount of performance enhancements. If you're getting stronger and you're getting softer, and then at some point you've gotten stronger, softer, and you're no longer progressing, you probably need to increase androgens. On the other end of the fence, if you got your androgens really, really high and you're getting all these different side effects, now your appetite's suppressed, you got horrible digestion, etc., acne out the ass. Maybe you even have these crazy DECA-like symptoms that some of these people in 19 Nords get, where they think their girlfriend's cheating on them and the whole world's ending and they just gonna lose their shit. Well, again, you're probably taking too much, and you're probably not taking the necessary ancillaries to mitigate the mental side effects of those things. So, with that being said, I think it's important that we only utilize as much as what we need. Because, again, you can take all the drugs in the world, but you'll almost become more toxic. I'm going to give a great example here. I've run high enough doses in past. It was like maybe a little over a gram, okay? But for reference, I was not near as big as I am now. And I've run a lot more than that now. But for sake of reference here, anecdotally, from my own experience, I was running like a gram, a little over a gram. It was like a test and DECA stack. Or, DECA, because I never really experimented with NPP at the time. But I never used Caber to manage prolactin. And I was using a pretty high amount of DECA. And I was also not using an aromatase inhibitor to manage estrogen because, well, I didn't get gynecomastia. So I was like, well, high estrogen's not a problem if it's not creating any issues, right? Like, as far as gyno goes. But there are some mental side effects that can occur when you're on really, really high amounts of 19 Nors and you have unregulated high level of estrogen. And the conversion of estrogen goes up as you get higher in body fat in the off season. And so in the short period of the off season, I was fine. Mentally, I was fine. Training was good, going good, until that upward tick of body fat started to increase. And once the body fat started to increase a little bit, and as the off season went on and the DECA was starting to really settle in, then all of a sudden I'm starting to have all these weird feelings of anxiety and all this paranoia, and I'm having all these just not my like me thoughts going on in my mind. And lo and behold, it's the drugs, it's the performance enhancements. You don't realize it because it hits you out of left field after weeks of being on them. Blood pressure started to trend up because water retention was high. Possibly some of that was due to dietary choices and the lack of sodium regulation and water retention, whatever. But point being is, I don't think I needed as much as I was using at that time. So I think, just anecdotally speaking here, from my own experience, it was almost like the drugs were just too toxic for me at that point. It literally shortened my ability to have a good off season. I could have used less, stayed leaner, and slowly grew, and probably had a much more efficient long-term off season. But because I had increased things so quickly, once they caught up to me, it was like the off season was over. I couldn't do anymore. I just felt so toxic. Now, as a comparison, me and Coach were working together. I'm not going to share number by number here, but it was well over a gram. And I felt healthy all the way through it. Like, I felt great. I haven't had any negative mental side effects that I can really recall on, like significant, where I'm like day to day, I'm like, holy shit, I'm fucked up. And didn't feel toxic. Blood pressure stayed 120 over 60 to 80 the entire time. We put on 45 pounds and everything just stayed good. I just had a little bit more of a moon face from the water retention. It's fine, as long as blood pressure is regulated. But it's like my body was ready for it. My body was ready for that amount of androgen. And so we utilized it, and it didn't create toxicity within my body. And therefore, we got the most levels of growth that we could out of it. But again, I think it came down to just being a bigger bodybuilder, because when I had come out of contest prep, I was probably at around a gram then. I was on a pretty high dose of testosterone, a little bit of Masteron, and then I had used Winstrol in the late stage of prep. And then coming out of that, we essentially did a recomp, tested NPP, very short acting, quick in and out, whatever. And we utilized the minimum effective dose. I think I ran a 750 milligram total load for the first period of my off season. Made significant progress out of just that, and then we slowly titrated that up as I started to get stronger and performance started to increase. And so I think incremental increases are really important. If you're going to do a cycle or an off-season blast, the last thing I recommend to anybody is just go to the top. It's like revving your engine in your car. You don't want to go redline it. Take it slow, steady. Let the gears shift. And once you start to let those gears shift and you start to get a rhythm in the off season, it's small changes, incremental changes over time. That makes the biggest difference. And again, this is where tracking is so important visually. Weekly check-ins. Weekly check-ins, along with having a structured program that says, this is how much drug I'm taking, this is how much food I'm intaking, here's my fasted blood pressure, here's my glucose. Tracking that week by week and watching that progress over time, you will be able to then reference back in time when things started to fall off. When the wheels were starting to fall off, here's where it happened. Oh, it was at this point at which we increased drugs. Oh, it was at this point whenever we pulled back cardio and we increased food. Those things are really important. And so, sorry to make that a huge topic out of this whole video, but I think it was really important to go over. Because we are in a time of instant gratification, and people want the quick results very fast. They want the results overnight. The shit that I have been dreaming to attain for 10 years, somebody wants to run one cycle and get that. And there might see some genetic hyper responder out there that can probably accrue a lot of it. Maybe just not the muscle maturity that I had to acquire over years of training. But again, it's like, people want fast results. I get it. I get the feeling of wanting to just rev the limit, or, hey, I'm young. And I guess I should preface that too, because really the question here was talking about being young and resilient. I don't care how young you are. I don't care if you're 18. I don't care if you're fucking 15. You're getting on your first cycle. You've got a limited time. From the time that you start using performance enhancements, your timer has started. And at some point, you're not going to get lucky anymore. And if you do, congratulations. You got the greatest genetic lottery of all time. There are some individuals who do this for 5 years. They check all the boxes. And somehow they still end up with liver problems, kidney problems, heart problems, mental problems. Again, that's where we kind of relate back to the earlier subject I was talking about in this video, the mental aspect to this. The mental health aspect to bodybuilding is so much more important than the physical, because if you're not mentally well, you're definitely not going to take care of yourself, and you're not going to last a long time in this sport. This is a game of who can play the long game, who can do this the longest without falling apart, who can commit to years and years of being patient and not getting the results overnight. So you've got a timer. The less that you push in the short term, I think the better. I think the more that you can get out of the least, the better. Right now I'm pushing things really hard, and ironically enough, I'm young. So would I say that I'm justifiably running a really high amount because I'm young? Or would I say I'm justifiably running a high amount because at the point in my life I'm at, I accrued enough muscle mass up to now to require it, or to justify it rather? Because it might just be a coincidence that it happens to be that I'm young, because I've been training since I was 12. And it's not to say that I had hit my natural limit by the time I started performance enhancements, but I was sure as hell a lot further than most people who start performance enhancements. And I trained for many, many years. I was already like really, really ahead of the curve. And even now I look back and I'm like, I still could have gotten more if I had a better diet, like I said, tracked these things more efficiently, maybe become a little bit more regimented and neurotic about my routine. But I thought I had all the crosses checked, or the boxes checked off. I thought I had it all right, and I still didn't, and I still don't. I'm still trying my best to just be better every single week. And so I don't know, man, because the person who asked this, he's a young guy too. So I really like the question from him, because I imagine he probably has a little bit of devil's advocate that goes on his mind about, do I push hard right now, then later? Yeah, I guess in a sense, looking at you, you can probably justify it as much as I can, because you're a big guy too. And you might require it. But again, it's like, get away with the least that you can, because you're going to stay healthier. And the question then becomes, what am I going to have to do once I'm at the pro level? If this is what I'm having to do just to win my pro card, in the discrepancy from being a pro and a winning pro is that much of a gap, that's an incredible leap that you're going to have to make. And so if you think that you're going to be able to continue to do what you're doing right now at that point in your career, if it takes you 5 years to get there, maybe we'll be having a different conversation. I don't know. I really don't, because I'm sure there's a couple rare examples out there of somebody. Because remember, bodybuilding in itself, we're the most experimented subject of elite individuals that are putting ridiculous amounts of hormones in our body and building muscle at an accelerated rate. We don't have a control subject clinical trial on bodybuilders. We're all just trying to figure this out as we go, and so we find that there is a different answer for each individual. Some people have different response to different androgens, different drugs, right? Different training styles, different diet plans, different cardio regimens, different protocols for prep. So again, I think it really just comes down to the individual. But from a general rule of thumb, I think you're better safe than sorry. Not pushing things really hard unless you can justify it. I think that's enough on that. I think if I just keep talking about it, I'll just keep just going on a tangent. But the last thing I think I can leave that with is just I see too many guys my age, younger, older, who just have no business doing what they're doing, because they don't have enough commitment to what they're doing to really do it to the best of their ability. It's like, not only are you pushing your body really hard in terms of your health, but you're not even like actually doing everything necessary to maximize the results from this. And so to that, I think that's just really young, like a young, immature, and reckless mindset. I think if you're going to do this, I think you have to have a level of maturity within yourself that, well, I might say I'm okay with living until I'm 50 years old, but once you're 50 years old, man, you're going to be begging for more time. You're going to be begging for more time. I certainly, I've played devil's advocate with that. Like, I'd rather live 70 years knowing I lived every life, or every day of my life, enjoying it and pursuing the things that I knew that if I didn't, I would regret, than to live to be 95 years old, but I can't even wipe my own ass, and I'm a burden to my family, and I have to live in a assisted living center and not able to take care of myself or take care of my own family. It's like, yeah, I can see where people can, play that game, but again, you don't get a choice in how long you live. You could wake up tomorrow, or you might not wake up tomorrow, is what I'm trying to get at here. So I think trying to have some assessed, or rather some calculated risk in what you're doing, and also just, if you're going to do this, please get your lab work. Please monitor your blood pressure. Do the basic stuff. I was just talking to my girlfriend today about it. I said, I need to go finally make an effort and go get a echocardiogram done and a calcium score done, and go ahead and find out my injection fraction on my heart to make sure that it's all good, because I know it's usually pretty recommended to do it like every 5 years or so, depending on age. I know it's recommended like that for older people, but I'm also not the average person, so it might be a good idea to go do that. So that's something I want to get done here soon. If anybody in the comment section has any recommendation on how they went about doing that, or if there's anything I need to know in regard to, like, getting a recommendation from my primary care physician, feel free to leave me a comment down below and let me know. But yeah, I think that's enough for this video. It's almost 50 minutes, so really, really good questions, guys. I really hope that y'all will send me more like this, because I definitely love answering questions like this. Definitely gives me something to think about, because a lot of these questions are questions I didn't even really think about until now. I've been trying to think of topics, and here you go. People just threw them my way. So anyway, I hope y'all appreciate the video, like the video. Leave me more questions, and maybe I'll do another one of these here soon. Peace.